Yeah, obviously ran into a buzzsaw. Like ran into a program with great tradition that has great habits for 40 minutes. That's the one thing that, like, when you watch a Coach Izzo coach team, like their habits are like, it's why they've been so successful the last whatever 35, 40 years. Like they're relentless. Their intensity, their toughness. They don't like they don't have many breakdowns. They don't, and all their players play with an edge, which is really impressive. And you can see it kind of we wore down towards the end. Their pace is tremendous offensively. Fears is a great point guard, man. He gets the ball up that floor, and their wings are running. But they put a lot of pressure on you in transition defense and then rebounding. And not just us, they do it to every team they play. You gotta be ready for a smash mouth game when you play one of his coach teams. And very impressive. I thought our guys, we competed, we played hard. I thought their pace was getting to us. You could see in transition we weren't getting back. We got to the point where we were just sprinting back to their guys instead of like sprinting to gaps and protecting the paint and putting guys on islands. And I thought the last 10 minutes, they just drove right by us. It didn't matter if it was our bigs or guards. They just drove by us and got to the rim, and that can't happen. The game was still in the wings, man. I think it was a 5-point game. They missed a free throw, maybe 10 or 11 minutes left. We didn't get it. They inbound the ball. They miss another shot. We didn't get it again, and credit them. They made the effort. That's what they do. But if you want to beat teams like Michigan State, you can't have free throw box out. You can't miss them. And that's where I thought they just kind of wore us down, was with that effort. And, and we got to shoot the ball better. We had some looks, in the first half, and it's hard when you go through those 3 or 4 minute spells where you're not scoring. And I thought we had a couple in the first half where, to only be down 8 at halftime, it was by the grace of God, because it was close to getting out of control, because they were missing some shots too, thank God. But we can't go through those spells, where we go 4.5 minutes without, making shots.
Questions? Coach, to like that right there, they like three-point shooting. We like talk about it from like after a few of these games. Did the shots look good? Was it their defense? And at this point in time in the season, what can you do as a coach to kind of help them over, through these slumps?
Yeah, just keep them confident. Like I thought, we missed 16 of them, and I bet you 9 or 10 of them were open shots. Like we just got to make them, and we just got to keep our guys confident. We got to stay in the gym, and like the last, we went 9 for I think 22, after starting 0 for 12 against Michigan. But tonight, a lot of it was their defense too. But we had quality looks for the Division I level. You just have to knock them down. We got to stay in the gym. We got to keep our guys confident and keep the ball moving. And I think it's been better the last 4 games, and we are getting some cleaner catch and shoot shots. It's never going to be perfect when you're playing against Big Ten defenses, but our ball movement has helped us get open, better looks, and now it's just knocking them down.
When you don't have the perimeter shot on like a day like today, how does that sort of handcuff other parts of the defense? What does that do to a guy like Hannes or to Frank? Or what is the the chain reaction?
Yeah. Well, I mean, what makes it harder, because they shrink the floor. They shrink the floor. It's harder for Zoom and these guys to get to the rim. When they're packing the paint when we aren't making shots, and so it affects everything. It helps our ball movement a little bit when they are shrinking the floor, because we can get the ball reversed quicker, and we have to get kind of to our stampede action, which I thought we did a couple times. Zoom drew a foul, JJ drew a foul, catching, ripping, and driving, and really being aggressive with it. But at the end of the day, we have to shoot those open shots. And when you're missing them like tonight, they're so lethal in transition. Like now they're rebounding long shots and going. And you could see, like, when Fears or their guards would get it, I mean, that thing's down the floor in 2.5 seconds. And it puts, too much pressure on your transition defense.
This part of the schedule was always going to be tough. You, knew it. Everybody saw it. But you're in it now. What's the mood of the team? How do you get out of it? How do you sort of get one of these big, what would be big wins that then get you to the other side of things?
It is. And that's the one thing, like, it's crazy because I know the outcomes aren't what we wanted against Michigan and Michigan State and at Purdue. Like, those teams are going to beat a lot of teams, but the one thing, like, we've gotten better. Like, there was even stuff tonight, that's the number 2 defense in the country, and it pretty much is every year. And we still manufactured, we were 12 of 15 inside the 3-point line in the first half. I think for the game we were like, 22 of 33 inside the 3-point line, and it's just knocking down threes. We played against an elite defense, and we still scored at the rim. We outscored them in the paint, 42-32. That doesn't happen to Michigan State a lot. I've watched these guys for a long time. Like, that doesn't happen a lot. Now it just comes down to, we make some shots, it's a totally different game. Even if not 3 for 19, like, even if you're 6 for 19, it's a totally different game. There's totally different scenarios in the last 8 minutes if we would have knocked some of those down. And so, I will show film with our guys. Like, there's stuff we got to learn from, and it's the stuff that we can control. Like I mentioned, the free throw box outs, guarding guys one-on-one, keeping them in front, chesting up, and it's those margins that we have to get better at, because controlling the shots, like, we have to shoot them, and there will be games that we make them, but the other stuff, that's my concern.
Can you address the announcement by Desmond Claude?
Yeah, obviously everybody saw his post last night where, he says he's injured. And, University of Washington, we have an elite student health care. It's one of the tops in the entire world. And, it's centered around every student athlete being taken care of, and not just every student athlete, every student, on campus. And we're here for them. And that's pretty much all I can say right now.
Is he gone, or is he still going to be
That's
around?
all I can comment on right now.
Okay. And then with Hannes going through this stretch, everybody knows who he is.
Yeah.
They're scouting against him.
Yep.
They're defending him.
Yep.
And he looks like he's still coming through it okay. Can you tell us, how he's grown and what he's learned just this last couple weeks?
He is. He's the focal point of every scouting report. You can just see the way teams guard us and how physical they were with him, and not just like guarding him, like they're making it hard on him, and I thought he had some really good looks again today that just didn't fall, a couple rimmed in and out, and he's the one thing we can't lose sight of is, as talented as he's a freshman, he's never played a Big Ten schedule. He'd never played against guys like now he's played against some really good competition, but the physicality over here, it is different, and I'm proud of the way he's adjusted and still really produced at a high level, especially on the rebounds. He's going to score it. Like, he had 3 or 4 shots that he doesn't miss, tonight and on Wednesday night, and they just didn't fall, but they'll fall. But just really proud of him, and you can see his competitive spirit out there.
What is it that Tom Izzo does? I think he's the best coach in the country. What is it that he does that makes him so successful, and what's maybe something he does that you wish you were able to do?
Yeah, just like, you can tell he just drills those habits into him. Like, if you're not tough and you're not about Michigan State and wearing that jersey, you will not get on. You can't get on the court there, because it doesn't matter who they put in that jersey. They all play the same way. They're connected. They're tough as hell. They're physical. They play with a chip on their shoulder. But they don't make many mistakes. They just don't. They don't turn the ball over. Like what they have tonight, 5, 6. Everybody plays their role, and he does a great job getting guys to play into their role and buying into the team. And playing with that toughness to where they're not going to get punked. They're just not. Like, you can match them, but like they're coming at you for 40 minutes and with elite habits.
How does a game like this tonight prepare you for games later in the season that you're gonna need to get that intensity, that level of effort, and all that?
Yeah, every game that we play, like, everybody's kind of got a different style. Like I mentioned, as fast as Michigan State plays, like, Michigan plays that fast, just different. Michigan's running to the 3-point line with 4 guys or 5 guys at times. Where Michigan State is like, they are pushing that thing to the paint. And that's where Fears is just elite. And but every game, we learn something, and I think just these, like being able to, to still be in the game with 8 minutes left against two of the top teams in the country, especially defensively, like it shows we're making improvement and we can do it. Now we Percy saying, like, we got to get over the hump. Like there has to be a game where we, like Wisconsin did at Michigan, we got to make 15 threes. We do. Like as a D1 guard, like we got to knock down these shots when we're open, and it's coming. Our guys just got to keep believing. They got to keep getting better through film, in practice, and continue to come together. We've come together a lot since Christmas. Like we really have. We've improved as much as anybody in those 3 weeks.
Michigan State really attacked the glass tonight. What can you say about their intensity on the glass and how you have to match that when teams just bring that level of physicality?
They do that every single game for the last 35 years. It wasn't just tonight. That's Michigan State. And like I said, you have to match it. You got to match their physicality. You got to match their effort, which is a lot easier said than done.
Yeah, they're fifth in the country in offensive rebounds allowed per game. So yeah, and then also, what did you see from your guards tonight? The way they handled fears defensively.
Yeah, I thought we did a decent job. I still thought he controlled the game. I thought he controlled the game defensively, and I thought he controlled the game offensively. I thought whether he was getting to the rim, when they kind of really broke the game open, he had a couple where he got to the rim, scored it, and then, but that's why he's one of the toughest competitors in the country.
To follow with that, you saw Fears last year in East Lansing.
Yeah.
What has changed in a year for him?
Yeah, he looks like he's playing he always played with that toughness and that swagger. I think he's playing a little bit freer offensively from what it looks like on film. He's shooting the ball, a lot better than he was last year. But he's still he's an orchestrator, man. He runs their team. And you can tell, like, he's the guy. As good as those other guys are, they feed off his toughness, they feed off his leadership, and he brings it every possession. And you can tell when somebody's not, he'll tell Izzo to get him out or he'll get him out, and that's what a great point guard does.
They have a point in that game where he goes out and it's 13-13. That second unit for them comes in and get 2 threes from Tang. That for a long time
It's huge.
was the separation in the game. That moment and that sort of second group for them, how much does that hurt?
Yeah, I mean, they hit one. We came down and we dug too much on Kohler, and they kicked it right out, and he knocked it down. And then I know they got another 3 off an offensive rebound too. I can't remember which one of their kids hit it, but that was the separator in the first half. Like that was it was pretty much an even half other than that little spurt. But that's what they do. And number 2, Tang, like he's done that in a couple games, him in 99, if they're knocking down shots, that team's really, really hard to guard. And then I thought even Cooper, he made some mid-range jumpers in that first half that we have to live with, we have to live with those 17, 18 footers from their center because now he's not down there offensive rebounding, and number 2, 99 or Fears, they're not getting downhill or knocking down open shots.
You mentioned after the game against Michigan when it came to Wesley and Jacob, just a matter of getting them back up to game speed. In the Michigan game, it seemed like Wesley just took that half second to shoot, and then this game, not only is he playing some really intense defense, but the first 2 scores he has back are layups through contact. Just what you see from Wesley today, and just how encouraging is that he kind of just upped that gear in just the second game back.
Yeah, I felt he was more aggressive tonight. Driving the basketball, and you could tell he's more comfortable with his hand, and that's what we need. That's what makes him a great scorer. And these are 2 tough games to have your first 2 games back against. Like I said, the number 1 and number 2 defense in the country. And so, proud of those guys. Like, we know what they're capable of. And obviously Jacob it was a lot harder to get him open looks tonight. And you got to give Michigan State defense a lot of credit for that.
On the offensive rebounding today, you guys lost that battle 13-3. I feel like coming into Big Ten play, you'd be hard-pressed to find a game where you guys lost the battle on the boards. It feels like that's flipped coming into Big Ten play. When you look at not only having Jacob back now, but how the rest of the guys have adjusted to the physicality, do you think that they've just learned a whole bunch from that and can use that going forward?
Yeah, I think we can. I think a lot of it, like the teams we played to, are some of the best rebounding teams in the country, not just this conference. You know, and a lot of them been on the road too. But it, it is what it is. Like you gotta man up, man. Like we gotta respond to it. You know, the physicality. It's coming on Wednesday at Nebraska. It's gonna come against Oregon. It's gonna come against Iowa. Like every team we play, like that's the Big Ten. You know, and that physicality always has to be present. You got to embrace it. You know, we have to, and some of our guys do. Like we embrace, like Hannes, Frank, they embrace the physicality. You know, now we got to get our guards embracing it. You know, which they do at times, and when they do, that's when we're a good rebounding team.
We're not going to get a chance to talk to you before you head out on Monday,
Yeah.
but heading into Nebraska with Fred Hoiberg, just another great coach. What have you been able to see from them so far? Have you done much on
Yeah,
that game?
just how hard they play. I haven't watched it. I've watched probably 4 or 5 of their games, but just how hard and how connected they are. They're playing as well as anybody in the entire country right now. You know, they might be the hottest team in the country. You know, I think obviously they're undefeated this year, but I think if you go back to last year, they won 5 or something. They've won like 21, 22 games in a row, and so he's done a tremendous job. And you can tell that team's bought into each other. Like they're bought into each other's success, and their defense, they're flying around, scrambling, like they're tremendous. But they got big time shot makers. They just do. They can shoot it at all 5 spots, and that's why they're dangerous. And they share the basketball and play at an elite speed. And when you got 5 guys that can shoot it, it's you have to hope that they miss a lot of them.